This is a normal map, and this is a normal map. And this is a normal map because it's made of normals. Now this video talks about more than just normal maps, so if you already know about them, you can skip to this timestamp to get stuck in a time loop. Now that we trapped a part of the audience, let's talk about normal maps. Normal maps are a type of bump maps, which are what I thought displacement maps were, which I thought were distortion maps, which turns out aren't even real. That's okay there, we'll get to those. I'll even hold a tiny map competition at the end. But in essence, all these maps are just images that are used on other textures to add small details to 3D objects, except when they're not. But let's begin with bump maps. Of all these weird maps, I think these are the easiest to visualize, and sort of controversial, which I'm gonna get to in a bit. The way they work is simple. A bump map is a black and white image where the brightness shows you the height at that point. And that's where it's a little controversial, in a very niche way. Let's play a game. Here are 3 maps. One of them is a bump map, one of them is a displacement map, and the other one is a height map. Can you match them? If this was your guess, then you might be right. Or not, I don't know, because they're all the same. All 3 are black and white maps, where the color determines the height. The only difference is what they're used for. Height maps and displacement maps do basically the same thing. You place them on a surface, and what they do is they displace the place it's placed on. But generally, height maps seem to refer to using them on larger things like terrain. Now while researching this, I also found out about something called parallax mapping. You might recognize these from some Minecraft shaders because that's where it seems to be the most obvious. I'm not entirely sure how these work, but I'd imagine they're quite similar to height maps. But all of that, it's easy. Anyone can add detail by actually changing the shape. I think the real magic here lies in creating detail without actually creating detail. See, with bump maps, instead of using the color to add height, you use it to calculate the angles of these bumps. Also known as the normals. Yes, we're getting close to the big one. Normally, pun intended, a flat surface would have a normal like this. It's perpendicular to the surface, and the light that hits it is calculated based on this normal. But if the surface had a bump like this, the light would hit it at different directions on the bump. A lot of times though, this bump doesn't actually need to be 3D like this. We can keep it flat but still apply these normals to the light. And that's where a friendly neighborhood bump map comes in, which is basically a 3D scan of the surface, except the height is shown as a color. And bump maps are cool because they can be used to simulate a lot of shapes like this. Or even this. It's brilliant. No, seriously, it's brilliant. Today's sponsor. I enjoy learning about things that I don't already know, which is why I like to explain certain topics that I find interesting. I think the most effective way to understand them is through simple individual explanations, which Brilliant does quite well by giving you a bunch of problems that you solve by interacting with the elements yourself. I've been going to the science course and it's genuinely fun and satisfying to solve problems like these. This course focuses on how certain physical principles work. You learn by clicking and moving things around and seeing their direct results, which in turn helps you build your intuition for understanding and solving future problems. This kind of approach makes the topics more memorable, and since you start with the basics and build up from there, you create a better foundation. So if you enjoy my videos, there's a good chance you're also gonna enjoy Brilliant, which you can try for free for 30 days and get 20% of an annual subscription by scanning this QR code or visiting brilliant.org/tvgames with a Z, or by clicking the link in the comments. Well, that's not normal. Okay, so bump maps show height, which is used to calculate the normal angle by checking the height variation at that point. That sounds fine until you realize that you're limited to certain angles, and since bump maps can only show slopes like this, they're not always accurate. Or they simply don't look normal? Meet Norman, the normal map from 24 Bump Street. See, bump maps only contain height information which is used to calculate the normal angle. And let's call him Hector. You can think of him as a vector mostly because he is a vector, which is essentially just an arrow, and it's made up of these components. You can think of these components as steps, like 3 steps to the right and 2 steps to the up, but that's Hector. Well, Norman here understands the job better than the bump map. While a bump map simply goes, give me the heights, we'll figure something out. Norman tells you to keep the height, and that he'll somehow store the components instead and use them to find Hector, the normal angle. And Norman does this beautifully by assigning these components to his red, green and blue channels. Which means that instead of a map that stores height, Norman is a special map that stores the direction of these normals in the form of colors. This can change between programs, but in general the components for Hector look something like this. Red and green show the horizontal and vertical steps, but the blue tends to show the upwards one. Since it can't go below the surface, the upwards component can't be negative. And this explains the light blur pill that you see on normal maps. It occurs when Hector is facing up or when the face is flat. The normal map or the bump map or even the displacement map is used along with something called the diffuse map, also known as the texture. This is important, but it's quite boring. You take its color information and turn that into color information. Yeah. Now, about that map competition I mentioned earlier. The third place goes to bump and displacement maps since they're very straightforward and simply make sense. The second place goes to normal maps for using their colors in a very powerful way. But what about the first place? Well, that one goes to a different type of map, represented here by Miss Spectacular, the specular map. Miss Spectacular shows specularity, which is basically shininess. She tells us which parts should be shiny and which parts should be matte, using black and white. But Miss Spectacular here represents more than that. See, maps like this could be used for many purposes like reflections, glowing, or lighting. Well, at least that's what they're usually used for, but you could definitely use this sort of mapping for many things that aren't the standard. Oh, and I mentioned distortion maps at the start. They're very similar to these maps, but instead they use their color values to move the pixels behind them, so as far as I know they're more of a texture shader than a map. But now that you tapped into maps, perhaps you're not capped into flats and become the captain of pants? That doesn't make sense. I'm beginning to feel like a map god.